Good morning, family. Welcome to today's Lessons for Life. Today is Thursday, November 5th, 2009, and today we're reading in 2 Chronicles Chapter 35. And as always, I encourage you to read these chapters for yourself and see what you get from it. Email us and we'll put it on the blog. Now today's lesson, and I read through the chapter, and this is kind of really a offshoot. As I was reading it, just made me think of something else I wanted to talk about for Lessons for Life. Because we see here, they're talking about King Josiah and really him preparing the people and keeping the Passover, and he was distributing the Passover offerings. And it just made me think about just being in a position really to give out to others or to distribute to others like King Josiah is, because the best way you can help somebody is if you're able to, you're in a position that you can help them. So the best way to help somebody in need is if you're in a position of strength. And this is what I was thinking about this morning. Sometimes you need to make sure that you put yourself in a position of strength first, so that you can effectively really help somebody else. Because if you're both in a position of needing something, then you can't help anybody else. So this is, like I said, it's really offshoot, but it's a lesson that is important, I believe, for us to learn. And I just thought about this verse. I was reading about King Josiah, and distributing to the people for them to keep the Passover. And a good example, a story, if you take the airplane, and they talk about, if something happens with the airplane and you're with the child, and they usually give out these oxygen masks or whatever, they drop down. But you need to make sure that you put your own mask on first before you start to put on the mask for the child, because the child can't help you. So you need to make sure that you take care of yourself first, so that you're now in a strong enough position that you can now effectively take care of someone else who may need assistance. Because if they get the oxygen, if you put it on them first, and then you running out of oxygen or whatever, you can't really help them. So that is, I think, a good example of even what I'm talking about, where you need to put yourself, or we need to be in position of strength, really to help somebody else, and be able to help them more effectively. If you have two blind people, and they say, how can the blind lead the blind? You can't both be blind and expect to get out of whatever situation that you're in. One person has to be able to see or can get around in order to help the person who may be blind. So that's what I got. Like I said, it's definitely a tangent off of today's chapter. That's why I tell you to read it for yourself. But this is something I thought about as I was reading it, just with Josiah distributing the different things to the people for the Passover offering. And then later on in this chapter, kind of sticking with the chapter, something else I was just looking at, it was just how, and it was interesting, Josiah went up against the king of Egypt. And it's interesting because king of Egypt says, he was going to war with someone else, and King Josiah kind of steps in, but Egypt, the king says that basically he's doing what God told him to do, and that God is on his side. So he was saying, Josiah, just step out of this. Don't come against me, because I'm on God's side with this. And we talked about this before, about it's not whose side is God on, but who's on God's side. And then we see that Josiah doesn't heed that, and he continues to fight against him, and that's really King Josiah's downfall. So it's just another example of the lesson that we learned before about, really positioning ourselves, being in right standing with God, not thinking that God just got our back with whatever we might be doing, but making sure that we're doing what God wants us to do, and we're on God's side, and that's where we'll have success and victory. And that's it. So I want to share those two lessons with you today. With that, create yourself a wonderfully blessed day today, and we'll talk again tomorrow.